Hi, everybody. Welcome to our podcast, The Old College Tribe. I'm Peg Keogh, and I'm joined by my special guest, Mark Hernandez. Mark is a Stanford grad who spent 25 years as a high school English teacher. He recently pivoted and has, in my opinion, a very cool and quirky social media presence. He talks about college essays. Today, Mark and I will be talking about his story, how he ended up at Stanford as an undergrad, and then Mark will be sharing his keen insights on how to approach the college buying process, how to look at selective colleges and admissibility, and much more. Stick around, you won't want to miss it. All right, welcome back, everybody. I am super excited today to have my special guest, Mark Hernandez. I didn't actually find him, but Kathy Portally, our social media guru here at CAP, found him and shared him with me. And when I watched his stuff, it was just so, like I told you, Mark, when I met you online, to talk about being on the pod. Quirky, it's unique, it's got great content. So we'll share that at the end so that you can follow him. But it's just really, of all the stuff out there, I just love quirky, different stuff. So kudos to you on that. I was immediately like, I gotta talk to this guy. He's gotta be cool, because this is so cool what he's doing online. And I'm sure, I know you didn't start that long ago and you have quite a few followers. So I think a lot of people probably agree with me. So that's a big reason why I reached out. And you just have a really, and we're going to get into this, really cool story. You know, you landed to be at Stanford, and then your background as a high school teacher, and now you've pivoted to a new thing, which I could totally relate to because I did that 15 years ago, pivoted, and so we'll go through all this. So, and I think what your perspective is going to be, it's going to be really cool to have on the podcast. So thank you for being here. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for those kind words. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. All right. But before we get into the nitty gritty here, into the meat, as all of our listeners know, we're going to do a song. So Mark was totally game to join in. So what's your song? Give us kind of the background, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, so my intro song would be Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. That is a song that I fell in love with when I was 11. And I will tell you that my father still, when he hears it, he still says he thinks of me and my brother. So that's very dear to me. So when he listens to this, he doesn't listen to podcasts yet, but I'm going to again listen to this one. So when he hears this, he'll know that I'm thinking of him. And then also, my youngest son performed a karaoke to Sweet Child of Mine for a talent show in his elementary school. So it's a three generations of loving that song.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, if our listeners, if you haven't heard it, Guns N' Roses, you will easily find it on Spotify and everywhere. Very famous song. So, okay. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for being game to join in. So let's start. It's what I just call your origin story. So just give us, your growing up, and we'll start with that, and then we'll get into your high school years, and then how you landed at Stanford, why you landed. I know you have good financial stuff around that, and then we'll talk about Stanford a little bit before we get into you being a high school teacher for 25 years.
Sure. Yeah. So I was born at Alta Bates Hospital in Berkeley. I was raised in Oakland. And then I have to say, I was very, very fortunate to go to Head Roy School from fourth grade on. And that school was incredible. I had just the best teachers you could ever ask for. I still have, honestly, the English teachers I had when I was there are responsible for me being a teacher. I had just incredible teachers. I will say my favorite of all time, like the wizard, the genius, the legend, David Enlow at the Head Roy School. He's in his 50th year of teaching right now.
What year?
He's his 50th year of teaching right now.
My gosh. I thought you said that, but I was like,
shout
50?
out to Mr. Enlow. It is his a tribute to him. He's in year 50. And he's just the best. And I will quickly tell you, Peg, as part of my, in my teacher journey, I went back to watch him. I've gone back a couple times to watch him teach. When I sort of had the idea, like, well, wait a second, maybe my fear was maybe he was actually a lot better than, maybe I thought he was better than he actually was. But then when you go back and watch him as an adult, I'm like, okay, wait a second. this guy's actually better than I thought he was. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I was very, very blessed to have some of the best teachers out there, and they
Yeah.
taught us, the fundamentals, and they taught us well, and it was just a great, great experience.
Yeah. So then you get into your high school years. So this
Yeah.
school you were in it. It wasn't like you joined that school 9 through 12.
Yeah.
You were
Yeah,
just
it was
in
a
it. Yeah.
K-12. It was a
Yeah,
K-12.
yeah. So then you hit your high school years, like, everybody you start if you think you're gonna be college man, you start thinking about that. So how did that develop and what schools were you looking at and why'd you ultimately decide on Stanford?
Yeah. So we had, and I don't know that it's the same environment today, but ours was competitive school. I mean, the school is very small. My graduating class had 48 students in it. And
Yeah.
so we had a lot of attention, but there's a lot of it was a pressure cooker, I'll say. But we just sort of did our thing and we got after it and such. I will tell you about Stanford, since you mentioned it. I almost didn't apply to Stanford. I was walking around the halls on December 11th. I remember this, December 11th, and the college counselor for our school stopped me in the halls and she said, "Hey, wait a second. I just saw your college list and I noticed you're not applying to Stanford." And I go, "Yeah, that's correct." And she says, "Why not?" And I said, "I don't want to go there." And she says, "Why not?" And I say, "Well, I like the people there." And she goes, "Wait a second. Who do you know that goes there that you don't like?" And I was like, "Nobody." She's like, "Look," and she honestly, like, she gave me the application like on the spot, like, go fill this out and we're gonna get this done. And so, it's due December 15th. And so from December 11th, December 15th, I applied to Stanford. But that was not part of the plan at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so tell me, because I know when we met originally, you had applied to a lot of other California schools, and what
Yeah.
was the thinking about how you built your list, basically?
Can I tell you there wasn't a ton of thinking. I'll say I had 2 plans, either go to law school or get into broadcast journalism. And so I'd applied to a couple schools that had emphases in broadcast journalism, and then I thought I'd apply to a couple schools that would help me get into law school. But
Mhm.
other than that, there wasn't much of a plan. It was a lot simpler back then. It really was.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and, sometimes people don't even have plans now, like, they have an
That's
idea of
that's
where
also
they
true.
wanna go, and then they're
Yeah.
yeah, which is that's a whole nother conversation. So then you get to later your senior year. Obviously, you got into Sanford, you got into other schools. So take me through as a family or however you guys made that decision and the finances behind it and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, Peg, and this is a hard one for me because, it's gonna sound flexy, and I totally get that, but it is you asked. So, I had multiple full ride offers to several schools, and then there was Stanford. And Stanford's financial aid when we got it, 'cause I got in, as you say, I got in, Stanford, I was super excited and just, thrill as punch, and then see the financial aid offer, very intimidating and very underwhelming for us.
Yeah.
Underwhelming for what we expected and intimidating for what we got. So that month from April to May was a tough one because I was facing either go somewhere for a full ride or go to Stanford and, incur a significant financial, burden for my father and for my family. And so that wasn't easy. That wasn't easy. And I will tell you too, that bless my dad. He knew that I wanted to go. And actually he wanted me to go there too. And so he essentially went to financial aid, like, personally, and asked if there's anything else that could be done, and they were bless them, they were, amenable, but they offered $1,000 more dollars in aid, which wasn't gonna move the needle that much for us. It was nice, but it wasn't moving the needle that much. So there we were, and then, my dad, bless him, I come from he was his mother, my grandmother was born in Mexico, and he was born in Redwood City, and they were ours is like many families, and we put a real emphasis on education. And so I knew that he wanted me to go, and I knew that I wanted to go. The basic deal was if finance is the only thing, he's like, "Look, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll find a way. We'll make it work." So with that, and with at least a few mixed feelings, I decided to go to Stanford.
Yeah. And then how did you make it work though? Because you
So
told
bless
me,
you.
and it was that something you figured out once you were there? Or did you kind of have that in your mind before you said, because we always say to families, we'll figure it out
Yeah.
is not a strategy, and
No,
that's how
totally.
people get dug in deep into debt, basically.
Totally. Yeah. So I was you're right. It was not a plan until I got there. And then once I got there and actually saw the course book and I saw the requirements for graduation. And yeah, I probably should look this before. But when I got to Stanford and I saw the course book and the requirements for graduation, and then I saw how many units my AP classes had earned me. I started figuring out, wait a second, I've got to get 180 units to get out of here. Basically on day three, I guess day one and day two are sort of like hanging out, but then day three is when I started looking it over and I go, wait a second, this actually happened. So honestly, day three, I started planning a course, planning a path where you know I would be able to get out early. And
Yeah.
so that was what I did. The way we handled it was one thing that helped us handle it was that I, from day 3, made it my mission to graduate as early as possible. And so, I just took heavy course loads. I took one summer school class at UCLA, but took heavy course loads. I was very intentional about which classes I took when, based on when they were offered. And, sometimes it meant taking the 8 o'clock class in the morning that no one wanted to take, but it was just whatever it took to get the units done, to get done as quickly as possible to save my dad as much as I could.
Yeah, and how quickly did you finish?
So I finished in 2 years and 2 quarters. And if I may, okay, I've told the story, but again, this is flexi. I totally get that's flexi. Uh, uh, I applied for graduation, and I also applied for to end my contract with on-campus housing because like, look, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'll see you guys later. And Stanford would not let me out of my contract for housing, and I was like, wait a second, why? I'm done. The president of the university actually called me into his office to talk about this. I said, "Look, I just wanna go, okay? I'm happy here, I'm happy, but I'm done, and the whole goal here one of the goals was to save my dad money, and I don't wanna pay for housing when I'm not taking any classes, just seems
Yeah.
silly." And but then he pointed me to there was some, codicil in the student agreement that I had to be on campus for 9 quarters at the time. And so I was like, "Hey, man." But anyway, but his real thing was like he said, "My real intention is how did you do this?" Because he too, Peg, like he's like, look, we get it. We get it that Stanford is pricing itself out of a lot of very qualified candidates. I want more people to do what you just did because
Yeah.
that will make Stanford more in reach for more people. And so he actually not made me, but he asked me to draw out what I did and how I did it and how I'd help other people do it. And I spent like half an hour like drawing this whole thing out. And he's like, that's incredible. It's wonderful. Thank you. And I was like, "Great. Well, can I get on my housing contract now?" And he's like, "No, I can't do that." But he did give me a scholarship for the units that I had to take, a couple classes that I took, just sort of like, hang out on campus for my last quarter.
Yeah, so that yeah, yeah. Well, it's good to hear what he shared with you.
Yeah,
And kudos to you for having that grit and figuring it out. I mean, I know a lot of kids, I mean, undergraduate is it's a really cool chapter in your life, so I
yeah,
don't a lot of people might be like, I don't want to cut it short, but that is a
yeah,
strategy. And we
yeah,
do talk to
yeah,
families about that.
yeah,
And it might be different now how much AP transfers in compared to when we were younger. They
yeah,
might I mean, that's more on the I don't get in the weeds on that stuff as much, but I even remember with my son that some of the stuff would replace a class and some of it, they're like, here's your elective credit. It's like, well, that's great that I have 15 hours of Spanish is what my son had, but that's not going to help him graduate early.
Right,
So
right,
it's
right.
not, I just want our listeners to know it's not necessarily, oh, my kid's taking a lot of APs. We can do that. The devil's in the details. You really have to talk to each college and
Yeah,
understand, and I would have it in writing, how things will transfer and replace different gen ed requirements or even major. Like my son didn't have to take business calculus because of
right.
his 2 APs in high school, but that's really college dependent and you've
Yeah.
got to get it in writing just, for CYA reasons. So that's just a
Well
little
said. Well said. And I'll also
sidebar.
admit, hey, you're right that they changed the game because I think colleges sort of started figuring this out and they said, huh, if we give too many AP credits, then people can graduate early easier. And there has been pushback because I'll say I taught AP English for many years. There were definitely kids who are like, look, I can't get any credits from my college for this anyway, so I'm not even taking the exam. So they would take the
Yeah.
class with me
Yeah.
and then get in to their college and they figured out where they're going. And I'm like, well, wait a second. I can't even get any classes for this. I'm not even taking the exam. Like,
Yeah,
that
because
definitely
back
happened.
with my kids, the exam was $100. I don't know what it is now, it
Right,
might be more. So
right.
it adds up, you got 3, 400 per kid. I had twins. I mean, it's like cha-ching, cha-ching. And
Yeah.
to that student's point, which is a good one, well, if it's not, I'll take the class, I'll get the A, I'll show that I'm challenging myself, but why pay for an AP test if the colleges aren't gonna give me any credit anyways?
So, yes, now my pushback to them, and they're right, and totally fair, totally fair. My only pushback to them was, other than again, like, assuming that the exam cost isn't prohibitive, then what it does do is it gives you a practice college exam, right? It's 3 hours of sitting down and actually having focus for 3 hours for an exam, and that was my argument.
Yeah, well, and I don't again, out of my sweet spot, I don't know if colleges look at what you got on the
Yeah,
AP exams. If you have a
yeah.
bunch of fives, that might help with admissions because to your point, it's more analogous to a college exam and okay, well, this kid did well kind of thing.
Yeah, yes, and by the time they're seniors, like, the scores didn't come out till July, so, like, my I had all seniors, so, like, they didn't that wasn't relevant for them.
Oh, yeah, that's where I don't even remember any of that stuff with my kids when the scores came out. So, I guess if they took them junior year, which my
Yeah,
kids had a few
yeah,
junior year, then that's part of the admission application. But, this
yeah,
just shows how complicated and convoluted this whole process is now. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. So that's through high school and then how you kind of got through Stanford from a financial standpoint. So let's just talk about Stanford and
yeah,
then I'm going to ask you, I mean, you've been teaching forever and I don't know how and I'll chime in cuz I went to Cornell. And so that's another one of these schools that's sought after,
yeah, yeah,
sometimes for the right reason, sometimes not, in my
yeah.
opinion. But what was the and it could be different now. I know things have changed quite a bit, but the culture, like if we have people listening, they're like, yeah, my kids are interested in Stanford. How would you describe the culture there, on campus? I mean, you mentioned your high school was a pressure cooker.
Yeah.
What was it like when you got
S
there?
Stanford was not. Stanford, my experience and my understanding still is that there's a fun but dangerous game in the culture there, and essentially it's this: let's make it seem like we're not working hard at all. And so the whole bit is like, it is, "Oh, I didn't study for this," or, "Oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do this homework," and it's like, people say that and they pretend like they're not working hard, but they're working insanely hard. And
Yeah.
so it really is this sort of, there was, again, like, once you figure it out, you can sort of play within it, but there was this sort of facade of ease and peace, but behind the scenes, people actually are working really hard. So having said that, it was a lot of fun to hang out and such. It was a lot of fun to be around, but there was this sort of consistent downplaying of the work that people were actually doing.
That's interesting. You kind of wonder why. Are you telling your peers that so that they'll be like, well, he's not working that hard. I don't need to. And then they do bad. I mean, it's almost like, why are you even doing that?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I also think it's sort of a
Yeah.
flex. It's sort of a flex too,
Yeah.
which is like, "Oh, yeah, gosh, I got an A. I can't believe it. I didn't even work hard on that." And it's like, "Come on now." Right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. 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 So if you had to like describe a type of kid that would thrive there. And you can pull this too from your
Yeah,
25 years of, teaching and talking to kids about college, having them go to schools and come back and talk to you
yeah,
about it. Like what
yeah,
kind of would thrive at a place like that? And I don't mean just from a grade standpoint, because
right,
ultimately if you graduate with a B or you graduate with an A, that's not going to change the trajectory of your life, but
right.
it's just thrive across all aspects.
Yeah. So I do think too, one of the wonderful things about Stanford is that they do encourage people to try new and different things. I does not mean like the, spirit of innovation in Silicon Valley or entrepreneurship, although that's part of it. But I do think the people who are gonna thrive there are people that are willing to, yeah, just try new things and meet new people, because Stanford, bless them, like, they do have a very, diverse population and different backgrounds and such, and, uh, yeah, I mean, I loved it there, but yeah, not but I loved it there, and part of it is because I was always willing to try stuff. I mean, especially freshman year, oh my goodness, I tried a bunch of different things, and and it definitely encouraged you to just get out and experience things.
Yeah, so it sounds like a kid who kinda has that inclination of trying new things. If you
Yeah.
wanna get in and yeah, like, I used to sit in the stacks and study, and you just wanna go to the
Yeah.
stacks and just and you're not, it's like, "I wanna do this is what I wanna do, and I'm not really interested in clubs or looking at this or going to that event." That's not as much of a kid that would really feel at home and thrive as much.
Yeah, it is funny too, you mentioned stacks for sure, like, we definitely, we would talk about going to stacks, but then to sort of, like, go there and not really actually study, and that
Yeah.
definitely happened a bunch.
I wish that was me, because I used to go to the graduate library and go, because otherwise it was a social event in the libraries, you know?
Right,
I
right,
was
right, right,
like,
right, right, right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, I definitely I played hard, but I worked hard.
Yeah.
So, and this one you might not be able to, I'm not putting you on the spot, but do you think you look at the Stanfords, the Ivies, the U Chicagos of the world, do you think that what you just described could be the same across other schools?
So this is why I would be a Stanford homer, because my experience and my understanding talking to students, again, I've only gone to Stanford, but my experience, my understanding of talking to students, talking to people is that the Stanford environment is different. It does feel more relaxed. I think listen, like, the weather definitely contributes to that. It's gorgeous
Yeah.
weather most of the year, very easy, and that contributes to it. It's a gorgeous campus, as are many, but my understanding is it is far more easygoing in terms of ethos. I should say ethos in terms of culture, in terms of zeitgeist than other schools are.
That's really interesting. I mean, obviously, I have no experience because I remember going to Cornell and it was very, it was fun. I mean, Cornell's unique in that there's public colleges, which I went to. I was from Jersey, so I was an out-of-state kid in the public. And then there's the private part. So you had, creme de la creme New York kids in the public part, and then the private was just like Stanford. So it's
Right.
just there wasn't a big, like, snob thing, that would've really turned me off.
Yeah.
It's just not me. But, I mean, most of all my buddies, like, we worked, and we
Yeah.
didn't complain about it, but it's just so
Yeah.
interesting what you say. It was almost like this pretense of, like, "Yeah, I'm chill, I don't have to do much, I don't have to open a book," and it's like, "Come on," there's no way in hell that's true?
So,
So,
Peg, you brought it up, so I'll mention that. That was like so my the way I played that game, and I definitely was part of it. I was definitely part of it. And my thing was what I would do was and this is advice for students and advice for parents and all of it. So like I will be injured on this hill. The most productive time to do work is from 7 in the morning to 10 in the morning because no one else is awake. You can go pretty distraction free. And that's what I did. Like my bit was I was going to be pretty diligent about getting in bed by midnight, which I know may seem wild to people, but at times like a major accomplishment. So be in bed by midnight, up by 7, and then study from 7 till whenever I had class. And that was my most productive time. Like, so that's how I got away with it. Is I would be
yeah,
working when
yeah.
no one was seen, so that all they would see is just like me hanging out, but then I was actually working behind the scenes.
Yeah, yeah. I guess you didn't have any of those 8 o'clock science labs that I had at 8 a.m.
So
So you
I
could
did have a
take,
couple
yeah.
8 o'clock Spanish classes, I will say that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. So that gives kind of and obviously Princeton, Dartmouth, every school is going to be different, right?
Yes.
But that gives an idea. I think every kid, I mean, this is one of my things is this strive factor that I always talk about. That's what parents should really be looking for, not ranking,
Yeah.
not where the boyfriend's going, not because you've heard of this school, honestly, not because you went to it as a
Yeah.
parent. You should find where your kid's gonna thrive, and
Yeah.
that's what's gonna make them do all the things that you're
Yeah.
saying kids at Stanford do. Go
Yeah.
like, my son he was at Kelly Business School at IU, and he just pursued tons of stuff. And
Yeah.
so he got so much out of IU, whereas another student could show up and just do what they need to do. And that's true at Western Washington University or Harvard. It
Yeah.
truly is.
Yeah.
The name is the name. at the end of the day. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please follow us, share the show, or maybe even send it to a parent or counselor who you think would enjoy it. I'm your host, Peg Keogh, and I was joined by my guest, Mark Hernandez, a Stanford grad, veteran high school teacher, and now a college essay consultant. Check him out on social media. This episode was produced by the wonderful Eileen Campbell, and we'll see you back here next week.